Hello, BookTube. Well, as you can tell, I'm still on my couch, but the day has dawned. It's a beautiful, bright, hot summer day here at the very end of October in New England. uh, that's okay. It is the very first time that anything like this has happened in the history of this part of the world since it cooled from magma. Uh, about 5 billion years ago, but nothing to worry about, nothing to see here. But in that time, to spare your delicate sensibilities, I have showered and changed my shirt, and I've also, as you can see in the background, I'm doing a little laundry. The laundry never stops. That's somebody told me when I got a washer and dryer here in the place. An old, a practiced domestic goddess, as she used to refer to herself, a mother and a grandmother, warned me right away. She said, "Oh, well, if the machine's in your house, the laundry never stops." And I thought, "Oh, what do you mean? Of course it does. Once you've done a load, you've done a load." She was absolutely right. The laundry never stops. And in addition to that, I took the dogs out at 6 together with my 15-year-old dog very gingerly walking along, and the puppy swerving all over the place and jumping at fallen leaves and studying bugs when they crossed her path. And then when we got back in, I settled my sweet old dog on the couch here. She's right here next to me, uh, and took the puppy on a walk by herself to get her. I want to get her used to just walking along beside me without pausing in consternation or confusion over every little sound and every little interruption. I want her to be a walking companion for me, and I want it to happen soon. She's 3 months old. In no time at all, I want this to be something that she looks forward to, and she already does. She's already getting better at it. But and it also drains her energy, which is wonderful because she has quite a bit of energy. Then we got back, and I read Tina Brown's Vanity Fair Diaries, the new book, her Vanity Fair Diaries, which was really entertaining. it was really really entertaining, full of name dropping. But if you know the world that she's talking about, you just couldn't ask for better. Actually, you could ask for better, of course. Graydon Carter's book will on Vanity Fair, on his Vanity Fair years, if he writes one, will be better, but only just. And I also finally got around to reading Rich Savin Williams' book, Mostly Straight, about sexual fluidity in men, especially young men, and how the idea of gay straight dichotomy as a street that people don't cross except to experiment or when badly drunk or when incarcerated without alternatives, that they don't ever do it voluntarily out of preference, not just idle curiosity or on a dare. That idea is largely wrong, and I could have told this author that a long time ago. That young men are extremely sexually fluid, and yet for some reason, I considering how many middle-aged, upstanding fathers and grandfathers I know who were definitely willing to experiment without any kind of coercion once upon a time. Uh, I guess I just assumed that a book would never be written on the subject. And this book was not only written, it was researched. I thought it was absolutely great. And it's thin, too. So if you. My only problem with it. My only problem with it's a wonderful book. It's much better written than I thought it would be. It's grounded. It asks the right questions, and it doesn't know the answers ahead of time, if you know what I mean about academic inquiries like that. That always bothers me. The one quibble that I have with it is the cover. The cover pictures a thin, rather epicene young man, and the implication of the cover is that you have to sort of be leaning in the lavender direction, as we once upon a time said, to even consider it. And that absolutely isn't true. During when Steve Con 18 rolls around, once I've had enough wine in me, allow me to tell you stories about the front line of the Iowa Hawkeyes football team, none of whom looked like that kid on the cover. The cover sends the wrong message. The cover suggests that you need to be slightly effeminate before you're even a subject for Mostly Straight, for a book called Mostly Straight. And that isn't true. But the book knows that that isn't true, and it dispenses with the cover right away. So if the subject interests you, I highly recommend the book. It's kind of rare when you think about it that we get intelligent, accessibly written, well done, um, non-political sexual studies. And it's kind of rare that that happens. Usually they're bristling with politics, and this one isn't. So I highly recommend it. I recommend the Tina Brown book too. But anyway, the sun came up. The day is hours and hours advanced. I've read 2 books. I'm now going to write for a few hours. I'm going to try another solo puppy walk a few hours from now, see if I can burn off more of her energy. I also am curious to see how quickly she will adapt to the idea. What I want her to understand, she's encountering on these walks all these things that are brand new and loud and confusing, and she sits down and her triangular ears come forward like that and she studies them. I noticed with a great deal of approval that she studies them without a single trace of fear. She's just curious. But what I want her to do, what I want her to get to understand, is that as long as I'm right there, that's all she needs to know. That she can walk on the sidewalk next to me as if she owned the world. Every dog that we encounter, of any size or age or breed, is going to defer to her. That's how she's going to see it. They're actually deferring to me, but she'll never know that. My beagles never knew that. And nothing that she hears or sees that's loud or confusing can hurt her in any way. Not when I'm there. So I just want her to realize that, and she's getting close to realizing it. Even though she's very young, she's getting close to realizing that as long as I'm right there, she doesn't have to stop and assess everything. But we'll see. The more she does it, the more she'll get used to it. That's how all of us do it. The more she does it, the more she'll learn to prioritize some things over others. But anyway, before I do that, it occurred to me that the one video that I've made so far today was made hours before dawn, when all of you were Betty by, and that the whole stretch of a Sunday is going on, and ordinarily on a Sunday I'm complaining about having no books. And that put me in mind to a tag. And I thought, I should look at BookTube and see if there's a tag that I want to do. I know there are a couple. Like this, for instance, the From My Country tag, which I think Sean the Book Maniac tagged me on, and I very much want to do it. But then, when I was looking through BookTube, I saw something that takes priority over all other things. The creme de la creme of the BookTube tag. Another foodie tag from Josh at Literary Gladiators. Can you believe it? He did another one. I think he succumbed to seasonal madness, because this one is pitched for the Halloween season. It's the pumpkin book tag. And I had to do it, of course. So I thought, I will do a Sunday tag, even though it's not a bleak and barren Sunday, and therefore I'm not miserable. I'll do it anyway. So question number 1 is simply pumpkin. And I also want you to know, those of you who are watching the clock, that we're starting the tag at the 8-minute mark, which is 2 minutes longer than 2 minutes after when most tag videos end. Don't try this at home, kids. All right, so pumpkin is the first one. A writer you always make a point of reading in October. Josh went with Edgar Allan Poe, and so will I, of course. He's the natural choice. For me, I also read Sleepy Hollow, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving, my beloved Washington Irving, every Halloween. But it's Edgar Allan Poe, and of course this Halloween, this October, we're all nudged along a little further by October Allan Pober. Oct Edgar Allan Pober. the Edgar Allan Poe appreciation and read along that Brian at Brian's Book Bastion is doing. That's quite entertaining. So if I remember, I'll link it down below, but you should definitely go and catch up if you haven't seen all the episodes. Then question number 2 is problematic. It's Pumpkin Spice, and it's a work you would read to impress a millennial. And I'm studying millennials. Before I was sequestered with a puppy, I was spending a lot of time with millennials, more than most people my age would do. And I've also studied them because they've come in for a bit of a shellacking in popular sociology tracks of one kind or another that call them the beast generation, the end generation, the narcissist generation. And that always bothers me when that feels like ganging up. And I always want to defend the underdog. So I've been digging into the research myself, the raw data that all these books depend on and twist one way or another. And what I've found is it's simultaneously encouraging and depressing. On the one hand, the encouraging side is that it looks to me like, by far, the most intelligent, inquisitive, self correcting, and naturally skilled generation of researchers and verifiers that has ever existed. What an average millennial can do in the way of um, quickly gathering information, assessing its reliability, and doing it across a staggering array of platforms and sources is just amazing. It's far beyond the capabilities of even the most brilliant student in the pre-internet era. It's like a generation of super browsers. And that's amazing because the internet is growing up the whole time. It used to be that it wouldn't have mattered. You could browse the internet really quickly because it was full of junk, but it's not anymore. And the millennials that I know are incredible at that. They're incredible at snapshot gathering of things to ground themselves. And that's on the positive side. On the negative side, there seems to be a lot of truth to the conclusion that a lot of studies are drawing that millennials cannot concentrate for any length of time. They can do the snap thing, but they can't read a book. The one professor that he hasn't written a book yet, I keep urging him to because he's really good on the subject. When he gives lectures in class to millennials, they are spellbound. And according to him, we are seeing a generation that, when it is adult, will be, as he puts it, cognitively, actually physically incapable of reading a Thomas Hardy novel. And that's a little alarming. That actually means the death of literature as we know it. Maybe it'll be a boom day for haiku. But the answer to the question is, well, I wouldn't read anything to impress a millennial because I get the impression it wouldn't. I think what impresses a millennial is how willing you are to set foot in their own world. You know, what is your digital self like? You know, are you doing it right, to use the phrase, or are you thumping along like an obvious member of an earlier generation? As my boys would put it, the easy way to tell the one from the other: do you sign your emails? Anyway, number 3 is pumpkin pie, a work that makes you think of autumn. Now, I know the answer here should be Autumn by Ali Smith because it's a fantastic novel, and a whole bunch of people on BookTube are talking about it. I think there's a widespread consensus on BookTube that either it or well, there's a widespread consensus that it should have won the Booker, and I don't know about that, but it's got autumn right there in the title. But for me, the answer is older than that. It's The House of the Seven Gables by Nathaniel Hawthorne, who's known, studied in school for The Scarlet Letter, but I think The House of the Seven Gables is his masterpiece, and it's an autumnal work, to say the least. It is about living things dying. It is about the melancholy season, and it was also mostly written in a series of autumns. So that would be my answer for that one. Then number 4 is Pumpkin Cheesecake, a challenging but rewarding reading experience. Now, of course, because this is BookTube, the answer is meant to be a novel, but I want to give a novel and a work of nonfiction. The fiction I want to do is Against the Day by Thomas Pynchon, which is an enormous doorstep of a novel of his, of a type that I don't know that he'll ever write again. It's a terrible thing when a serious author learns how much money they can make by phoning something in. They sometimes don't go back. That would be bad. But Against the Day, some of you may have seen A Book Chemist. He's a big fan of Thomas Pynchon. He's a big fan of Against the Day, and he should be. It's a brilliant work, and I knew that even the first time that I was clawing and hammering and beating my way through. I knew that I was in the presence of brilliance, but I didn't understand more than a third of it. And I've gone back to it since then, and it's extremely difficult. It makes Gravity's Rainbow look like a walk in the park, but I love it more every time. And I'm planning on a reread in 2018, whenever. The next time I encounter a hardcover of it at the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston, I'm going to get it and I'm going to reread it. So it'll be propinquity that decides it. But for a nonfiction, I wanted to mention a book I've mentioned on this channel before, but in case those of you aren't taking notes on my 1,500 videos, it's Capitalism by Anwar Shaikh. It's a 1,000-page tome about the nature of capitalism that I think has a couple of, if I understood it correctly, it correctly. It has a couple of fundamental flaws to it, but it's also brilliant, bristling with ideas. I loved it. And again, if I encounter, I got rid of it, and I shouldn't have, because I knew that it was tugging at my mind even when I finished it the first time. I knew that I was going to want to read it again, and I didn't keep it. I will encounter it again someday, or maybe when it comes out in paper, if it ever gets a paperback, I'll get the paperback, or maybe if the need grows too great, I will just wait until I get a new release from the publisher, and then I'll contact the publisher and say, yeah, thanks for the new release. I'm wondering, is there any chance that you might have a copy of this you could send me, even though it's old? Sometimes, especially publicists that I've known for years, they're willing to do that with a laugh, which is great, because we're all to quote from the greatest musical ever written, we're all in this together. But let's move on to Pumpkin Bread is number 5. An underrated work from a well-known writer. I'm going to go back to Nathaniel Hawthorne here. The underrated work is The Marble Faun by Nathaniel Hawthorne, which is, I think, stunning in its own way. People always criticize it because a lot of the scaffolding is very woodenly written, and I always want to tell them, well, okay, how up are you on your Hawthorne? He's a wooden writer. you can't fault that if you praise the Scarlet Letter. It's you have to go with an author's diction. You can't demand that an author use a different diction than his own. And Hawthorne is an extremely formal wooden writer. He's not at ease in your company, and he doesn't want you to be at ease in his. And Marble Faun, once you get past that, it glows with rampant, uncontrolled sensuality. It's an astonishing work, I think. I wish that it were better known. It was loved 100 years ago. Absolutely loved. Mainly, I must admit, for the wrong reasons. A lot of people loved it because how evocative it is of Italy. They used it as a travel guide. There was actually kind of an illustrated travel guide version of it. But it's great on the psychosexual level, too. A level that, I might add, Hawthorne ought to be better known for than he is. But then again, people don't rate Hawthorne the way they should, in my opinion, in American letters. Okay, question number 6 is Pumpkin Soup, a work you first enjoyed and then lost interest in. And I was thinking about this because at first I took umbrage. If I liked it, then why would I lose interest in it? And then I remembered there is a category here that this fits perfectly, and that is Star Trek fiction. I read every new Star Trek novel. I don't know why. I have no idea why. But I do. And I have read every Star Trek novel that's ever been written. And that's a lot. And yet, I lose interest in the minute after I finish turning the pages. There's only a tiny handful of Star Trek novels that are actually worth rereading. There are only a tiny handful of Star Trek novels that are actually ever worth reading in the first place. So they definitely count. Star Trek fiction. I read it all. And then lose interest in it completely. Wouldn't revisit it for all the tea in China. Let's see here. Number 7 is Pumpkin Donut, a light 5-star read. Of course, that bugs me because 5 stars comes from Goodreads, and I don't know what 5 stars means. What does 5 stars mean? I know Goodreads' definition. I saw it written. Is that an order? I know that that 5-star reads are different for some Goodreads users than others. I don't want to rate a book by somebody else's rating system. But if I take it to mean a light book that's still very good, a very good book that's easy to read, that pulls you right along, then I have 2 suggestions, one fiction, one nonfiction. And the fiction would be Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel, a book that's often mentioned on BookTube, but it can't get enough mentions for me. It's the single greatest Tudor historical novel ever written. Just an astonishing thing. Just amazing. I don't know what possessed her. I'd read all of her historical fiction before that book, and when I heard that, I think it was the London Review of Books was going to run a long excerpt of it, I thought, oh God, Hilary Mantel is doing a Tudor fiction novel. This isn't going to be pretty. And I couldn't believe what I was reading. It was like an author discovered her voice at age, whatever. It wasn't the beginning of her career. And when I finished Wolf Hall, I thought, well, okay, sometimes after a lifetime of fulfilling writing obligations and teaching obligations and whatnot, an author has that book in them, and it boils to the surface, and it's better for all of us if it gets published. Great. But it can't happen a second time. And Bring Up the Bodies was just as good, almost as good. It was Wolf Hall has something in it, a quality that I didn't see in Bring Up the Bodies, but I love them both, and they're extremely easy to read. The only quibble with Wolf Hall, the only thing that would slow anybody down, is the device that Mantell uses throughout, of referring to Cromwell in the third person while narrating everything through his eyes. So we're constantly being told he, Cromwell, and I at first didn't understand that, but then I came to like it. It oscillates our identification with the character in such a way that we're never quite comfortable knowing him, and that's good because that's the whole point of the character. Anyway, that's the fiction one, and for nonfiction, I picked Nate Blakeslee's books, American Wolf, which is about the reintroduction of a wolf pack to Yellowstone National Park, and is phenomenally good. Just as natural history and also as an adventure story, just phenomenally good. Can't recommend it high enough. And it's brand new in hardcover, so you will see it in bookstores. And if you're the least bit interested, if you've gone hiking in Yellowstone, as I have, every single inch of Yellowstone, if you're interested in wolves or conservation or nature writing, anything like that, grab it. It's wonderful. And I think it's probably going to be very popular this Christmas. It should be anyway. It's tremendous. Then question number 8, pumpkin picking. Within the last year, which genre did you purchase the most books? Purchase. People buy books? Oh, yeah. Let's just move on, shall we? Question number 9, pumpkin carving. A work that could be trimmed down. And for this, I picked the collected works of Stephen King. I think the first trim we should make, just a little bit off the top, should be to eliminate the books that aren't good, which brings us to 3. It cuts the number down from 572 to 3. And then in the 3 that are good, we could maybe trim a little more. Let's trim the sexism. Let's trim the children who talk like retarded people or half-wits or aliens instead of children. Let's trim those out. Okay, so all 3 of those books are a lot shorter. And how about we trim out the bloated passages? The passages that refer to Stephen King as an author? The cliched stuff about sunsets or physical infirmities implying evil? Let's trim all that out. Well, those 3 books are a lot shorter, aren't they? Okay, so maybe we've got enough for 1 volume now. Okay, once we've got those 3 books in 1 volume, let's trim out any character who doesn't have a motivation to do what they do. Well, we've lost all our villains, haven't we? Oh. And have we kept any of the good guys? Well, I don't know. The 2 that were hanging on by their fingernails seem to have as their motivation for doing good that they wear a sheriff's badge, as if there's never been a corrupt sheriff in the world, and as if that would be a motivation for you to take on the supernatural forces of the underworld. Okay, that doesn't seem believable. Maybe you should trim those too. Oh my. Okay, all of a sudden we've got 3 books in 1 slim volume. We don't have any heroes. We don't have any children. We don't have any women. We don't have any supporting characters. We don't have any good guys. We don't have any bad guys. And we don't have any motives. Well, but that's okay. We still have something. We probably don't have anything left to trim. The one last thing we should trim from the 3 books that now occupy 1 slim volume, that's all that's left of Stephen King, would be let's trim the parts of the plot that don't make any sense, or the parts of the narrative that don't actually have a plot. Well, they seem to be gone. The whole thing seems to be gone. I think, like the suburban house husband who's got clippers out at the hedge, I think we just kept trimming, and there's nothing left. Just his name. Huh. Well, okay, what about his name? Stephen King? That's not a bad name. I don't know. Stephen's a little long for Steve. We could trim a few letters in Stephen King, and what would we be left with? STINK. I like it. Let's leave it right there. Question number 10. Pumpkin Painting, a book with magnificent illustrations. This one I have a tremendous recommendation for you. And it will be, if you're American, it will be in your Barnes & Noble. For sure. There won't be a question of, it's the one kind of book you know they will stock. Barnes & Noble makes a great leather-bound classic collection series. It always has a table of its own in every Barnes & Noble. They're around $20 a piece. Sometimes there are sales, and they're less than that. Their Bible, big, gigantic, black, leather-bound King James Bible, is a Bible to own. It really is. Not only is it the King James Bible, which is the greatest translation of the Bible, but it's full. It has all of the original enormous engravings that Gustave Doré did for the Bible. All of them. Most Bibles, gift Bibles or whatever, will have just one. God creating, let there be light. creating the universe. But this has all of them. And that's amazing. That's amazing. For years and years and years, you could buy a King James Bible, and from Dover Editions, you could get a collection of Gustave Doré's illustrations, but you couldn't get both. You couldn't get them in situ. You couldn't get them where they belong. Barnes & Noble, pull it off. They did it. They also did the same thing with their Divine Comedy, which is the Henry Wadsworth Longfellow translation and has the Gustave Doré illustrations, all of them. But the Bible is the thing to get. If you want a great Bible to go through, not only that, but it's as sturdy as a rock. You can read it a million times, which of course you should, especially Adam of Memento Mori. And then question number 11 is Pumpkin Ice Cream, the most random book you recommend. I'm not going to scold Josh because he makes the greatest foodie tags in the world, but I don't make random book recommendations, and neither should anybody else. Books are extremely personal. When it was my job to recommend books, I would ask a customer probably 24 questions before I'd make a single suggestion, because you have to know what you're talking about. You have to pinpoint. Otherwise, you'll be left with 33 copies of David McCullough's John Adams. No, I don't recommend anything randomly. No one should ever recommend anything randomly, so I'm going to bypass the question in high dudgeon. Question number 12, what is your favorite way to enjoy pumpkins? Well, you know, BookTube, I thought we'd never get here, but I don't like pumpkins. They're gross. They taste like wormy earth. I don't like them in ice cream. I don't like them in lattes. I don't like them in pies. I don't like them in minces. I don't like them on a train. I don't like them on a plane. I don't like them in the water. I don't like them in a tree. I don't like pumpkins. They're disgusting. And the last one, question number 13, is Pumpkin Patch. Who do you tag? I tag all the usuals, but especially Richard Bruna. He's such a great channel, and I always forget to tag him. And he gently reminded me of that. So I tag him. I tag Adam at Memento Mori if he hasn't had a pumpkin spice latte in the last 30 days. I'm the Shah of Iran. I tag Curtis at Curtis Books and Film. I tag Lukash if they can pry themselves away from Shakespeare. I tag Peg. I tag Jess at Garden Scriptorium, who's recently returned to us, hopefully to stay. Who else here? Rachel. I tag Rachel Morrow. I tag Sean the Book Maniac, of course. Let's see here. Caleb? I'd love to tag Caleb. He's probably growing pumpkins, but he's out there in his garden all day and all night, like some sort of phantom booktuber. He doesn't make videos anymore. And who else? Jennifer? I did insert literary pun here. I can't imagine what your answers would be. And I had a whole bunch of other people. Those are the ones I jotted down. I have a whole bunch of other people that I want to do. But my urging here is that if you see this video, you should do the tag, because Josh's foodie tags are not to be missed. They are the event of the season. But anyway, I'm going to stop for now, BookTube, but I'll wrap this up and I'll see you soon. Thank you.